A single feather can carry the weight of an entire civilization's beliefs. These simple objects from nature hold the keys to our deepest cultural past. Feathers, shells, and stones are not just decorations. They have been woven into human traditions for thousands of years, acting as symbols of power, vessels for the spirit, and markers of identity across countless cultures. Why have these common items held such profound and enduring significance for so long? By the end of this journey, you will understand the secret language of these natural treasures and see the world around you in an entirely new light. We will uncover why an eagle's feather was considered a direct line to the gods, and how a simple cowrie shell could be worth a fortune. What story does a stone you might walk past every day silently hold? That feather, once part of a living creature, became a message from a world beyond our own. Long before cities or written words, our ancestors looked to the natural world for symbols, and they found them in the most ordinary of places. A smooth, water-worn stone from a riverbed was not just a rock, it was a piece of the earth itself, permanent and unchanging. A spiral shell carried from a distant shore was a tiny universe contained within a hard, protective case, a secret from the deep. These objects were humanity's first vocabulary, a visual language that spoke of the fundamental forces of existence. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of this ancient dialogue in places like Blombo's cave in South Africa. There they found tiny shells meticulously pierced to be strung as beads, dating back 75,000 years. This was not a practical invention for survival. It was an act of pure symbolism, a desire to adorn the body, to communicate identity, or to carry a piece of perceived power. A feather suggested flight and connection to the spirit world. A shell represented the mystery of life and the protective embrace of the womb. A stone embodied the enduring strength of the land. Can you look at a simple pebble on the ground now and see it not as a rock, but as one of the oldest forms of human expression? This deep, primordial connection is the very bedrock of tradition, a foundation that would soon support the weight of empires and the whispers of shamans. That headdress of eagle feathers was more than a magnificent display. It was a living antenna tuned to frequencies beyond human perception. When a shaman entered a trance state, the feathers were believed to amplify their connection, allowing them to receive messages from ancestral spirits or divine entities. This belief stems from a simple yet profound observation. Birds could fly. They could ascend into the sky, a realm forever inaccessible to humans, a place where the gods were thought to reside. A feather, therefore, was a physical piece of that ascent, a tangible fragment of freedom and spiritual elevation. This symbolism resonated across the globe. In the courts of ancient Egypt, the goddess Mat presided over the ultimate judgment of the soul. In the Hall of Two Truths, the heart of the deceased was placed on one side of a scale. On the other side was not a heavy weight, but a single, pristine ostrich feather, representing the principle of truth, order, and cosmic harmony. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul was granted eternal life. A feather, light as a breath, held the power to condemn or redeem for all eternity. This sacred status was mirrored in the Americas. For many Native American tribes, an eagle feather is not merely an object. It is a profound honor, earned through acts of courage and selflessness. It is treated with the utmost respect, used in ceremonies to cleanse and purify, its very presence believed to carry prayers directly to the Great Spirit. The wind that rustled through its barbs was thought to be the voice of the divine. Even in the misty highlands of Celtic Europe, feathers were seen as gifts from the other world. Finding a feather on a path was an omen, a message from the spirits, and they were commonly used in divination practices to interpret the will of the gods. Look closely at a feather's structure. The central quill, strong and unyielding, gives rise to countless delicate barbs that interlock to form a perfect, cohesive whole. To our ancestors, this was not just biology, it was a cosmic blueprint. It represented the universe itself, with a central axis from which all of creation radiates, a perfect map of interconnectedness. So a feather was never just a feather. It was a ritual instrument, a badge of honor, and a direct line to the heavens. Can you feel the weight of the countless prayers and hopes that have been entrusted to such a delicate, seemingly insignificant thing? This ethereal connection to something greater than ourselves finds a powerful, grounding counterpart in the next object of our journey, the humble shell. The perfect spiral of a nautilus shell is a map of the universe written in calcium carbonate. This logarithmic curve, known as the golden ratio, is a pattern of infinite expansion found throughout nature, and it is no accident that our ancestors saw it echoed in the sacred objects that washed ashore. Shells emerged from the sea, the primordial source of all life on our planet, and they carried that essence with them. They became universal emblems of fertility, protection, and a deeply rooted feminine power. Their very structure tells this story: a hard, impenetrable exterior that guards a soft, living interior, a perfect metaphor for vulnerability shielded by immense strength. This symbolism resonated powerfully in the ancient world. In Hindu mythology, the Shankha, or conch shell, is a sacred attribute of the god Vishnu. Its resonant blast is not merely a sound, it is a vibration believed to shatter negative energy, purify the atmosphere, and announce divine victory over chaos. Far to the west, the Minoan civilization on the island of Crete wove shells into their worship of powerful goddesses. They associated these natural forms with the womb and the regenerative, life-giving powers of the earth itself. Then there is the cowrie shell, whose distinctive shape, with its long, narrow opening, so clearly mirrors the female form. This was not a subtle connection. Across the globe, from Africa to Asia to the Americas, cowrie shells became a universal currency, not just of trade but of life. They were fertility talismans, sewn onto garments for ceremony and power, and placed in graves as protective amulets to safeguard the soul on its journey to the afterlife. Their use in divination rituals, from the Yoruba people of West Africa to various indigenous nations of the Americas, shows just how widespread this understanding was. The shell's own journey, from the mysterious ocean depths to the hands of humanity, mirrors our own profound search for origin and safety. When you hold a shell to your ear, the muffled roar you hear is not really the ocean, but it has always been heard as an echo of creation, a whispered secret from the deep past. This protective, life-giving essence, so perfectly captured in the shell, finds its ultimate, unyielding parallel in the silent, foundational nature of stones. Even the smallest stone in your hand contains the memory of mountains. While feathers reached for the heavens and shells echoed the sea, stones became the anchors that held human spirituality firmly to the earth. They are the embodiment of permanence in a world of constant change, the silent witnesses to generations. Standing before a monument like Stonehenge, you are not just looking at arranged rocks, you are feeling the collective will of a people who sought to pin their beliefs to the very bedrock of the planet, aligning massive stones with the sun and stars to create a sacred calendar that would outlast them all. This impulse to build with stone is a universal human signature. On a remote Pacific island, the massive moai statues stand as eternal sentinels, their stern gazes facing inland to watch over their descendants, their sheer weight a testament to a community's unwavering devotion. But sacredness was not only found in grand constructions. A single, unique stone could hold immense power. The black stone of the Kaaba in Mecca is a powerful example, a meteorite venerated as a divine gift, a fragment of the cosmos that fell to earth to become the focal point of prayer for millions. In indigenous Australian cultures, the land itself is a sacred text, and specific rock formations are not just landmarks, they are the physical bodies of ancestral beings from the dreamtime. To walk across that land is to read a story of creation written in granite and sandstone. In Scandinavia, people carved their history into rune stones, turning rock into a permanent record of a hero's life, a great battle, or a family's lineage, ensuring their memory would endure as long as the stone itself. From the first altars where offerings were made to the petroglyphs that told stories on canyon walls, stones served as our first canvases, our first boundaries, and our most durable promises. They are the ultimate symbols of memory, holding within their crystalline structures the weight of time itself. How many lifetimes have passed while a single river stone lay undisturbed, holding its silent vigil? This profound connection to permanence and identity naturally led to the most intimate use of these natural treasures, as people began to carry these anchors of memory with them, woven into the very clothes they wore. That chieftain's headdress was a walking declaration of power, a biography written in feathers and stone. This was the intimate language of adornment, a code understood by everyone in the community long before a single word was spoken. Your place in the world, your achievements, and even your spiritual alliances were displayed on your body for all to see. A single feather was not chosen at random, it was earned. It could tell a story of a successful hunt, an act of great courage, or a deep spiritual connection to the eagle or the hawk. Shells, carefully strung into intricate necklaces, acted as a social map. The type of shell, its color, and its arrangement could signal your tribal lineage, your status as a respected elder, or your role as a trader who had journeyed to distant shores. These were not just accessories, they were the original form of identification, a visual resume of a person's entire life. This personalization reached its peak with stones. A carved stone seal in the ancient world was your unique signature, pressed into clay to mark your property or your agreement. An amulet of jade or turquoise worn close to the skin was a constant, tangible source of protection and strength. In Maori culture, a piece of paunamu or greenstone is far more than jewelry. It is a treasure, an heirloom known as a taonga. Its value does not come from its beauty alone, but from the mana, the spiritual prestige and history it accumulates as it passes from one generation to the next. To wear it is to carry the weight and blessing of your ancestors. Across the world, in the American Southwest, the vibrant blue-green turquoise used in Navajo and Zuni jewelry serves a similar purpose. It connects the wearer directly to the elements of the sky and the life-giving rain, weaving the wearer's identity into the very fabric of the natural world. Your body became a canvas, and these natural objects were the paints you used to illustrate who you were, where you came from, and what you believed. Every choice was deliberate, a sentence in the story you told the world. What story would your own adornments tell? This deeply personal expression of identity finds its most profound purpose when these very same objects guide a person through the great thresholds of life from birth to death. A young warrior feels the weight of an eagle feather being placed in their hair, and in that single moment their childhood is complete. This is the power of a rite of passage, a universal human experience where feathers, shells, and stones become the essential guides. They mark the great transformations of life from our first breath to our last, providing a tangible anchor in the turbulent sea of change. At birth, a smooth cowrie shell might be placed in a newborn's crib, its hard exterior a shield against malevolent forces, its life-giving shape a blessing for the new journey beginning. This simple object whispers a promise of protection and a connection to the creative force of nature itself. When two people marry, the symbolism shifts to union and future. Shells are exchanged as tokens of fertility and the hope for a family, their beautiful, complete forms representing a prosperous life. In some traditions, couples hold a single stone during their vows, a physical reminder that their bond must be as enduring and resilient as the rock in their hands, able to withstand the pressures of time. But it is in our final transition, death, where these objects reveal their most profound role as companions for the journey beyond. The ancient Egyptians meticulously carved heart scarabs from green stone, inscribing them with spells from the Book of the Dead and placing them over the mummy's heart. This stone beetle was not merely decoration, it was a spiritual tool, a substitute heart that would not betray the soul during its final judgment, remaining silent and heavy with virtue when placed on the scales against the feather of truth. Across the ocean, Pacific Islanders sent their chiefs into the afterlife equipped with valuable shell currency, a practical and spiritual treasure to ensure their status and comfort in the next world. And on a windswept grave, a single, downy feather might be left as a final offering, a silent prayer for the soul's release and its gentle ascent to the heavens. In every case, these natural objects acted as a bridge. They transformed an intimidating, abstract transition into a manageable ritual, giving a community a shared language for grief, for hope, and for celebration. They offered comfort through their simple, physical presence, a piece of the familiar world accompanying a person into the great unknown. What objects do we use in our own lives to mark a graduation, a wedding, or a loss? They are our modern versions of these ancient guides, helping us navigate the very same human journeys. Understanding how these items shepherd us through life's milestones unlocks a deeper question, a code waiting to be cracked. What is the specific symbolic language that a feather, a shell, and a stone each speaks? A raven's dark plume spoke of mystery and transformation, while a dove's soft feather was a universal promise of peace. This was not a simple matter of beauty. It was a precise and intricate language where every bird was a living dictionary of symbolic meaning. To hold a feather was to hold a key to a specific set of powers and attributes. The eagle, soaring higher than any other creature, became the undisputed symbol of supreme authority and spiritual vision across continents. Its feathers were not merely decorative, they were the ultimate accolades bestowed upon chiefs and warriors to recognize unparalleled courage and leadership. They were the essential tools of shamans, believed to carry prayers directly to the realm of the gods. In stark contrast, the silent flight of the owl through the darkness imbued its feathers with the power of hidden knowledge and intuitive wisdom. An owl feather might mark a seer or a keeper of ancestral secrets, someone who could navigate the shadowy realms of dreams and the unseen. This specificity reached its peak in the cloud forests of Central America, where the resplendent quetzal bird was considered so sacred that its magnificent, flowing green tail feathers were never taken from a killed bird. They were gathered only after the bird had molted, for they were the direct symbol of the feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl, representing the unstoppable force of spring vegetation and the very air of freedom. The language of feathers extends deep into the mythology of other cultures as well. In Hinduism, the iridescent eye of a peacock feather is linked to Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and good fortune, while ancient Greek stories tell us that the stars in the peacock's tail are the all-seeing eyes of the giant Argus, placed there by the goddess Hera. Therefore, receiving a feather was a deeply personal and significant act. It was the deliberate transfer of a bird's essence, a bestowal of its specific strengths upon the recipient. The color, the length, even the subtle patterns in the veins all contributed to a complex cultural vocabulary. Every feather told a story not just of the bird, but of the person deemed worthy to carry its power. This detailed lexicon of the air finds its perfect, fluid counterpart in the equally rich and ancient symbolic world of shells, each curve and color whispering a different secret from the sea. The conch shell spiral is a frozen breath, a captured vortex of sacred sound. In the hands of a Tibetan monk or a Hindu priest, it becomes a living instrument. The air forced through its chamber is not just air, it is prana, the very breath of life, transformed into a deep, resonant blast that ripples through the visible and invisible worlds. This sound is believed to shatter negative energies, to clear a space for the divine, and to announce a moment of profound transition. It is the audible form of creation itself, echoing the first vibration that set the universe into motion. But the language of shells is not spoken in sound alone. Every curve and contour holds meaning. The scallop shell, with its grooves fanning out from a single hinge, became the enduring symbol of the Camino de Santiago. For medieval pilgrims, it was a practical guide, a cup to drink from, and a badge of honor. But its deeper symbolism was unmistakable, the many separate paths of different travelers, all converging upon a single, sacred destination. It was a map of a spiritual journey worn on the traveler's hat. Then there is the cowrie, its glossy surface and distinct aperture making it a powerful emblem of feminine divinity and the gateway of life. Yet its role extended beyond the symbolic into the prophetic. In the African diaspora and West African traditions, the practice of casting cowries, of throwing a set of shells and reading the patterns in which they fall, turns these objects into a direct line of communication with the ancestral realm. The shells become a randomizing oracle, a tool for the divine to speak through chants, offering guidance, revealing hidden truths, and diagnosing the causes of misfortune. And what of that simple, universal childhood act of pressing a shell to your ear? That muffled roar is not merely an acoustic phenomenon, it is the ghost of an ancient belief. Our ancestors truly believed that the shell held the voice of the sea itself, the memory of the primordial waters from which all life first emerged. To listen was to hear the whisper of creation, the voice of a god, or the wisdom of the deep. Each shell, by its very form and the sound it could produce or contain, carved out its own unique symbolic territory in the human imagination. Can you hear the echo of that ancient ocean in the next object we explore, the stone, whose silence holds a testimony just as profound? A stone does not need to speak to bear witness. Its very existence is the testimony. While feathers and shells tell stories of flight and flow, stones anchor our myths to the deep, slow time of the earth itself. Their language is written in their substance. Obsidian, born in the heart of a volcano, fractures into edges sharper than any metal. This volcanic glass was more than a tool. Its glossy, mirror-like surface was seen as a portal, a way to peer into the spirit world or to reflect malevolent energies back to their source. It was both a practical blade and a powerful spiritual shield. Then there is jade. In the courts of ancient China, a jade bai, a disc with a central hole, was not mere wealth. It represented the heavens themselves, and a noble's virtue was measured by their connection to this stone, prized for its unyielding toughness and serene beauty. A similar reverence flourished an ocean away, where the Maya and the Olmec carved jade into exquisite masks and ceremonial objects. For them, its vibrant green hue symbolized the eternal cycle of life, the immortal breath of the wind, and the very sap of the world tree. To hold jade was to hold a piece of the living earth soul. But the power of stone is not only in its material, it is in its placement. a medicine wheel laid out on a North American plain, with stones radiating from a central cairn, was a mirror of the cosmos, a sacred map aligning the people with the cycles of the sun and stars. The same impulse drove the builders of stone circles in Europe, who hauled massive monoliths across the landscape to create a permanent celestial calendar. And in the quiet contemplation of a Japanese rock garden, the careful arrangement of stones and gravel is not a random landscape. It is a miniature universe, a meditation on balance, impermanence, and the eternal nature of the mountains. Our ancestors did not just move stones, they wrote upon them. Petroglyphs carved into a canyon wall were not idle doodles. They were a library etched in granite, preserving the memory of a great hunt, the chart of a constellation's path, or the lineage of a powerful chief. This was knowledge made permanent, a promise to the future that these stories would not be forgotten. A single standing stone could mark a territorial boundary with the finality of a law, or it could stand as a silent tombstone, its enduring presence a guarantee that a life once lived here mattered. What unspoken covenant exists between a standing stone and the sky it points toward? This deep, physical connection to memory and place naturally transformed stones into something even more tangible, the very bedrock of early economies and trade. A single cowrie shell could purchase a goat, a measure of grain, or even pay a fine in a village court. This was not barter. It was a sophisticated monetary system built on a simple, beautiful object from the sea. For thousands of years, long before the minting of coins, our ancestors used the treasures of nature as the world's first true currency. Their value was self-evident, rooted in qualities we still seek today: beauty, rarity, and incredible durability. A feather does not tarnish, a shell is difficult to counterfeit, and a stone can outlast civilizations. The cowrie shell stands as the most powerful example of this natural economy. Its small, porcelain-like form was lightweight, easy to count, and nearly impossible to forge. From the markets of ancient China to the kingdoms of West Africa, strings of cowries became a universal language of commerce, facilitating trade across continents and cultures. This was a global currency that operated for millennia. On the other side of the world, along the misty coasts of the Pacific Northwest, a different shell took on a similar role. The dentalium, a slender, tusk-shaped shell harvested from the deep ocean, was so highly valued that it was strung on measured threads. These strings became a standardized unit of wealth, used in everything from purchasing canoes to arranging marriages and paying tribute. The value was not just in the object itself, but in the immense labor required to acquire it, diving into dangerous waters to pry them from the seabed. But currency was not limited to shells. In Hawaii, wealth was literally woven from feathers. Creating a single royal cloak or an ahula was an endeavor that could consume a lifetime. Skilled artisans would tie thousands of tiny, vibrant yellow and red feathers, each one plucked from a specific honeycreeper bird, onto a vast netting of Alona fiber. The result was a garment of staggering beauty and even greater economic weight, a tangible concentration of labor, resources, and status that was worn only by the highest alii, the chiefs. This was more than clothing. It was a walking treasury, a display of power so immense that it commanded respect and allegiance. Even the earth itself contributed to these ancient markets. Obsidian, with its razor-sharp edge, was a crucial commodity for tool-making and weapons. Sources of this volcanic glass, like those in Anatolia, became economic powerhouses, with their prized black stone being traded across hundreds, even thousands of miles. Meanwhile, in Mesoamerica and China, jade circulated among the elite, its value so entrenched that it became synonymous with virtue and eternal life. Turquoise, mined from arid deserts, was traded along routes that connected the pueblos of the American Southwest to great civilizations in central Mexico. The flow of these objects did more than just move goods, it moved ideas. A trader carrying obsidian would also carry stories and technologies. A string of dentalium shells exchanged in a coastal village might eventually find its way deep inland, connecting forest and shore in a web of mutual dependence. This commercial lifeblood flowing along ancient trade routes wove separate cultures into a more interconnected world. How many first meetings between distant peoples began with the respectful offering of a valuable feather or the examination of a string of unusual shells? This tangible value, this weight in the hand, was inseparable from their perceived power, a power that was soon called upon to heal the body and shield the spirit from harm. A smooth, cool stone pressed against a fevered brow was more than just a comfort, it was ancient medicine. In a world where sickness was often seen as a spiritual invasion, these natural objects became the primary instruments for healing and protection. They were the original first aid kit, each item selected for its specific energetic signature to combat a different kind of imbalance. The feather was the cleanser. A shaman would gently brush a fan of feathers over a person's body, not to touch the skin, but to stir the air around it. This was not a physical cleaning, but a spiritual one, the belief being that the feather could sweep away clinging negative energies, much like a breeze clears smoke from a room, restoring the individual's natural harmony. Then came the stones, the apothecary of the earth. Amber, warm and golden, was hung around a baby's neck to ease the pain of teething, its sunny color and electrostatic properties thought to draw out inflammation and distress. Jet, a deep black fossilized wood, was placed under a pillow to guard against nightmares and psychic attacks, its dark density believed to absorb malevolent forces. A warrior might carry a piece of bloodstone, a dark green stone flecked with red, believing its connection to the life force of blood could help staunch the flow from a wound. Shells born from the emotional depths of the ocean were tools for psychic and emotional healing. The abalone shell, with its breathtaking, shifting iridescence, holds a special place. In smudging ceremonies, its bowl cradles burning sage or sweetgrass, and its mother-of-pearl interior is seen as a mirror. It reflects the transformative nature of the cleansing smoke, showing that the process is not just about purification, but about change and the revelation of inner beauty. These objects were never passive trinkets. They were active allies believed to work in concert with the healer's intention. To wear an amulet was to carry a constant, vigilant guardian, a piece of the natural world's resilience acting as a shield for your own soul. In a time before modern medicine, this tangible connection offered profound psychological comfort, a sense of agency in the face of the unknown. Can you feel the weight of a worry stone in your own palm and sense the centuries of anxiety it has been tasked to absorb? This deeply ingrained belief in the active power of objects to influence our fate leads us directly to their most mysterious application, the art of seeing the future. The random scatter of shells was a sacred text waiting to be read. Our ancestors saw the entire natural world as a living oracle, a system of signs where the future could be glimpsed through the deliberate interpretation of feathers, shells, and stones. This was not superstition, it was a sophisticated technology of the spirit, a way to consult a higher order. In ancient Rome, the practice of augury was a state-sanctioned science. Before any major military campaign or the founding of a new city, priests known as augurs would ascend to a sacred enclosure and carefully observe the flight patterns of birds. The specific direction of their flight, the types of birds seen, even the way they called to one another, were all considered direct messages from the gods. A single feather, perhaps drifting down from such an omen, would be collected as a physical token of divine favor, a celestial approval stamp for an empire's ambitions. Across the world, in the kingdoms of West Africa, diviners would cast a collection of cowrie shells, small bones, and carved stones onto a mat. The seemingly chaotic pattern in which they landed was not random at all to the trained eye. Each position, each relationship between the objects told a story. This system, known as Ifa, could diagnose the spiritual root of an illness, advise on the prospects of a marriage, or guide a community in its most critical decisions. The diviner was a translator, fluent in the language of chants, reading the will of the ancestors in the fall of simple, everyday objects. In the royal courts of Shang Dynasty China, the most profound questions of state were answered with fire and bone. A shaman would inscribe a question onto a carefully prepared turtle plastron or cattle scapula, apply a hot bronze point, and then listen intently. The sharp crack that split the bone was the voice of the spirit world, and the intricate web of fissures that appeared was its elaborate answer, meticulously interpreted and recorded for the king. The fate of dynasties could hinge on the meaning read into a single, branching fracture. These practices all share a common, profound belief: the universe was not silent or indifferent. It was in constant communication, and feathers, shells, and stones were its chosen mediums, the tangible conduits for messages from beyond the veil. Interpreting them required a lifetime of study, a deep intuition, and an unshakable faith that the cosmos was whispering its secrets to those who knew how to look. What war was averted, or what king was crowned, because of the pattern left by a handful of cast shells? This ancient desire to decode the world's hidden messages found another, equally powerful outlet, not in prophecy, but in pure, breathtaking artistry. The vibrant red and yellow feathers of a Hawaiian ahula cloak are not just a garment, they are a constellation of ancestry and divine right, each tiny plume a single word in an epic poem of lineage. This artistic transformation of raw nature into cultural narrative represents one of humanity's highest callings. We do not merely use these materials, we converse with them, drawing out their inherent beauty to tell our most important stories. Consider the sheer patience required for such featherwork. A single cape could demand the capture of tens of thousands of birds, with only a few specific feathers taken from each. Artisans would then tie them, one by one, onto a woven fiber net in complex geometric patterns that encoded family history, territorial claims, and connections to protective gods. This was artistry as a sacred, painstaking act of devotion, where the medium itself was considered charged with mana, or spiritual energy. A similar reverence for organic material unfolded across the globe. In the lush Amazon, indigenous artists created magnificent headdresses from the brilliant feathers of macaws and toucans. These were not static displays, they were dynamic, living artworks that moved with the dancer, the rustling feathers believed to channel the very spirit and voice of the forest birds themselves during ceremonial rituals. The artist's role here was that of a translator, turning the visual language of the natural world into a form their community could wear and understand. But this artistic dialogue was not confined to feathers. The shimmering, otherworldly glow of mother-of-pearl was harnessed with breathtaking effect in the Mughal architecture of India. Craftsmen would carefully inlay thousands of tiny, iridescent pieces of shell into white marble, creating floral motifs and intricate calligraphy that seemed to capture and hold the light of the sun and moon. Walking through such a space was meant to be a transcendent experience, a glimpse of a celestial paradise built here on Earth. This obsession with shell mosaic reached its playful peak in the grottos and gardens of Renaissance Europe, where entire chambers were encrusted with countless seashells, fossils, and colored glass, creating a surreal, cave-like environment that celebrated the bounty and oddity of nature. Meanwhile, the lapidary arts were achieving their own miracles of transformation. The Olmecs of ancient Mesoamerica carved jade, one of the toughest stones on earth, into exquisite masks and figurines. Working with simple stone tools and abrasive sand, they coaxed serene human faces and mythical beings from the vibrant green stone, believing it to hold the breath of life and the essence of wind and maize. Their work was so revered that these objects were often ritually buried as offerings, returning the transformed stone to the earth in a completed cycle of reverence. Centuries later, Roman artisans demonstrated a masterful understanding of their medium by carving cameos from sardonyx, a layered shell. They used the stone's natural color bands to create dramatic contrasts, carving away the dark upper layer to reveal a light background, thus producing a detailed, multi-tonal portrait in a miniature landscape of geology. In every case, the artist was not just a maker, but a mediator. They stood between the raw, untamed power of nature and the ordered world of human culture, interpreting one for the other. Their creations were a coded language, a durable form of memory that could carry a tribe's identity, a dynasty's glory, or a civilization's concept of the divine across the chasm of generations. What stories of lost kingdoms and forgotten gods are still locked within the silent, polished surface of an ancient jade pendant? This legacy of making meaning from the earth is not a closed chapter, but a living thread that continues to be woven into the fabric of our modern world. That shimmering piece of mother-of-pearl is a fragment of the rainbow serpent's skin, left behind as it carved the world into being. Myths like this are not mere stories. They are the original instruction manuals for the soul, explaining why a simple object from nature could hold such immense power. They provided a cosmological framework, a sacred backstory that transformed a feather from a bird's plumage into a divine gift, and a stone from a random rock into a frozen tear of a god. These narratives gave people a profound reason to treat these objects with reverence, for they were characters in the epic story of their own world. Consider the cunning of the Norse god Odin in his quest for the mead of poetry. This magical brew, which conferred the gift of scalds and wisdom, was hidden by the giant Suttung deep within a mountain, guarded by his daughter. Odin's solution was a breathtaking act of transformation and penetration. He turned himself into a serpent, a creature of the earth, and slithered through a tiny, impossible borehole drilled into the stone itself. He did not shatter the mountain with force. He outwitted it, moving through the solid rock as if it were water. This myth forever links the idea of stone not just with obstacle, but with hidden passage and the transformative power of knowledge that can be won from the earth's very heart. A similar theme of cleverness resonates in the Greek tale of Perseus. To defeat the Gorgon Medusa, whose gaze turned men to stone, he could not look at her directly. Instead, he used the polished surface of his bronze shield as a mirror. This reflective metal, a worked and refined stone from the earth, became his tool for victory. And from Medusa's spilled blood, the winged horse Pegasus sprang forth, completing a powerful symbolic cycle. The stone shield enables the hero to conquer a petrifying force, and from that victory emerges the ultimate symbol of flight and inspiration, the Pegasus, whose very being is a testament to the feather's domain. These stories did more than entertain. They encoded vital ethical lessons. They taught that brute force is often less effective than wisdom, that reflection can overcome the most terrifying obstacles, and that creation and destruction are forever intertwined. They explained the natural world, making the iridescent glow inside a shell a permanent reminder of a cosmic creator, or the presence of a particular stone on a hillside the enduring proof of a mythological event. So the next time you feel an instinctive pull toward a smooth stone from a riverbank or the delicate curve of a seashell, ask yourself this: What ancient story is whispering to you from just beneath the surface of your awareness? These foundational myths provided the essential context, the shared belief system that made the use of these objects in communal rituals not just meaningful, but absolutely necessary. A shared ritual is a heartbeat that pulses through an entire community. These ceremonies transformed individual feathers, shells, and stones into a single, breathing entity, the soul of the people themselves. Think of a Plains Native American sun dance. This was not a performance for an audience. It was a profound, collective act of sacrifice and prayer. Participants, often pierced through the skin and tethered to a central tree, gazed upon eagle feathers as they danced, their individual suffering offered up for the healing and benefit of the entire tribe. Each feather in that ceremony was a focal point, channeling the collective plea of the people toward the heavens, binding them together in a shared experience of endurance, hope, and spiritual renewal. The power did not reside in the feather alone, but in the unified intention of every person present. Across the world, in the archipelagos of Melanesia, a different kind of ritual wove communities into a vast social fabric. The Kula ring was a ceremonial exchange of two types of shell valuables, red shell disc necklaces and white shell armbands, that traveled in opposite directions across a massive circle of islands. A man would paddle his outrigger canoe for days across open ocean, not for trade in the commercial sense, but to present a treasured shell arm band to his partner on another island. This act was a sacred commitment. The shell itself was not to be kept forever, but was meant to be passed on again, its true value measured by the fame of its journey and the strength of the relationships it created. These shells created an unbreakable chain of reciprocal obligation, friendship, and trust, turning strangers into allies and the treacherous sea into a connective highway. The community was not just your village, it was this entire network of people linked by the circulation of these sacred objects. And then there are the stones that still stand silent vigil on so many landscapes. The raising of a megalithic tomb in Neolithic Europe was an act that defined a people. It required the coordinated labor of every able-bodied person, hauling massive stones across miles, aligning them with celestial bodies, and constructing a permanent home for the ancestors. This was not slave labor, it was a communal project of immense spiritual significance. The finished tomb was a physical anchor for their collective identity, a place where the living could commune with the dead and reaffirm their rightful place on that land. It was a declaration in unyielding stone that this group belonged here together forever. In all these examples, the object itself becomes almost secondary to the act that surrounds it. The feather in the dance, the shell in the exchange, the stone in the circle, they are the physical tokens of an invisible contract. They remind each person that they are part of something larger than themselves, a story that began long before they were born and will continue long after they are gone. A shared symbol gives a group a common language, a visual shorthand for their deepest values and their most cherished myths. It answers the fundamental human question of who we are by showing us what we hold sacred together. This transmission of identity from one generation to the next did not happen by accident. It was a deliberate and careful process, a quiet conversation between elder and child that ensured the flame of tradition would never be extinguished. The knowledge of which feather to choose and how to bind it was a language learned at the elbow of an elder, not from the page of a text. This intergenerational transfer was the lifeblood of tradition, a quiet, continuous conversation that turned skill into sacrament. A young apprentice watching a master carver shape a piece of jade was not merely learning a trade. They were being taught to listen to the stone, to understand its hidden veins and its spiritual temperament. The precise angle of the chisel, the choice of abrasive sand, every patient stroke was a lesson in reverence, embedding the cultural values of patience, respect, and connection to the earth directly into the craftsman's hands. This was knowledge felt in the muscles and stored in the heart. Around the evening fire, the most vital texts were spoken aloud. The story of how the first conch shell was given to the people by the ocean spirit, or why the eagle's feather is the only one fit for a chief. These narratives were not entertainment. They were the primary curriculum, a people's encyclopedia sung and recited, ensuring that the reason behind every ritual action was understood and internalized. The correct way to cleanse a feather with smoke, the proper time to gather certain stones, the ritual words to be spoken when stringing a shell necklace. These details were guarded not in vaults but in memory. This created living libraries, where the elders were the librarians and the apprentices the new additions, ensuring the culture's most precious knowledge remained in constant circulation. It was an intimate and demanding education, one that wove technical mastery together with ethical and spiritual understanding. This process guaranteed that traditions were not frozen in time, but were living, breathing practices that could adapt to new circumstances without losing their soul. A tradition that cannot bend will eventually break, but one rooted in deep, orally transmitted understanding can sway with the winds of change without being uprooted. What song, recipe, or family story has been passed down to you through voice and demonstration alone? This fragile, beautiful chain of spoken knowledge now faces its greatest test in the rush of the modern world. A sacred feather headdress, once a conduit to the heavens, could be labeled a mere curiosity in a glass case halfway across the world. This act of removal was more than a theft of objects, it was a severing of a spiritual lifeline. Colonial powers, armed with new religions and economic systems, systematically dismantled the very frameworks that gave feathers, shells, and stones their profound meaning. Indigenous practices were branded as pagan superstition and actively suppressed by colonial authorities. Ceremonies that had sustained communities for generations were banned, and the possession of sacred ritual objects could become a dangerous act of defiance. The knowledge of how to properly prepare an eagle feather, or the songs that accompanied the gathering of certain stones, was driven underground, creating a desperate and damaging rupture in the chain of cultural transmission. At the same time, these sacred items were stripped from their communities and transported to Europe to fill the cabinets of collectors and the halls of nascent museums. There, a powerful shell currency that once sealed marriages and resolved disputes was reduced to a simple natural specimen, its economic and spiritual significance erased by a handwritten tag. This physical displacement was a form of cultural violence, divorcing the object from the living breath of the people who understood its language. The disruption continued with the flood of global trade. Mass-produced glass beads, while often adopted and creatively incorporated into new art forms, began to replace the intricate work of shell mosaics and carved stone pendants. The value of a hand-gathered dentalium shell, earned through dangerous dives, could not compete with the cheap and endless supply of factory-made alternatives. This devalued not only the material but the specialized knowledge required to work with it, pushing entire artistic traditions to the brink of extinction. When a single tradition is lost, a unique way of seeing the world, a specific vocabulary of symbolism, vanishes with it. The richness of our shared human story is irrevocably diminished. How many colors have faded from our collective palette because a certain song for gathering feathers is no longer sung? This painful history of loss makes the modern movements to reclaim and revitalize these practices a profound act of cultural healing. That severed spiritual lifeline is now being carefully repaired, stitch by symbolic stitch. Across the globe, a powerful movement of cultural reclamation is underway, where indigenous and local communities are not just remembering their traditions, but actively reviving them. This is far more than nostalgia. It is a profound act of resilience and self-determination, a declaration that their identity is not a relic of the past but a living force for the future. Consider the legal battles fought and won in the United States, securing the hard-won right for Native people to possess and use eagle feathers for religious and cultural purposes. This was not a request for a privilege, but a fight for a fundamental freedom, a recognition that a feather is essential to the practice of their faith and the health of their communities. In artist studios, ancient techniques are being breathed back to life. A new generation of carvers is patiently learning to read the grain of a piece of jade, just as their ancestors did, while contemporary weavers are incorporating traditional shell patterns into stunning modern regalia. Their work is a dialogue across time, using the vocabulary of the past to speak about the realities of the present, creating art that is both deeply rooted and vibrantly alive. This revival is inextricably linked to the salvation of language itself. In language immersion schools from New Zealand to Hawaii to the Navajo Nation, children are learning the ancient names for every type of feather, every species of shell, and every sacred stone. They are not just memorizing words, they are absorbing the stories and the world you embedded within them, understanding that to know the true name of something is to understand its spirit and its place in the cosmic order. This entire process is a healing of historical wounds. It is about mending the rupture caused by colonialism and reclaiming the authority to define their own cultural narrative. The goal is not to build a museum diorama of a lost world, but to re-embed these powerful symbols into the fabric of contemporary life. A young person wearing a feather in their graduation cap is not playing dress-up. They are making a statement about who they are and where they come from, carrying the strength of their ancestors into a new era. What does it mean for a community to reclaim the symbols that define it? It means healing, it means power, and it means the confident assertion that their values are not only enduring but essential. This vibrant modern engagement proves that tradition is not a static monument, but a living, breathing river, constantly fed by new streams of experience and understanding. A carbon date on a single shell bead tells you it was strung on a cord over 3,000 years ago, but science can trace its journey much further. That bead, found hundreds of miles inland, carries the chemical signature of a specific ocean, proving it traveled ancient trade routes long before the wheel was invented. This is the powerful narrative that archaeology and anthropology add to the story of tradition. While spiritual beliefs explain the why, these sciences uncover the fascinating how, revealing the practical, ingenious, and interconnected lives of our ancestors. Take a shell midden, what looks like a simple pile of ancient refuse. To an archaeologist, it is a detailed ledger. The types and ages of the shells can reconstruct seasonal harvesting patterns and changing sea levels, while the presence of non-local tools mixed within can map out trade and social networks stretching far beyond the horizon. Similarly, the careful arrangement of grave goods speaks volumes. A skeleton buried with a headdress of rare eagle feathers and a polished jade axe immediately tells a story of high status and spiritual authority, a person whose power was recognized and honored by their community in death as in life. The artifacts themselves become silent biographies. The science of sourcing materials is like forensic detective work on a millennial scale. Obsidian, that volcanic glass prized for tools and ritual objects, has a unique chemical fingerprint. By analyzing an obsidian blade found in a burial, scientists can often pinpoint the exact volcano it came from, sometimes revealing astonishing migration patterns or vast exchange systems that connected distant cultures. Anthropology then steps in to give voice to these silent objects. By studying living traditions where feathers are still used in healing or shells in divination, anthropologists can build a symbolic dictionary. This helps decode the purpose of a puzzling artifact, understanding that a cluster of cowrie shells placed in a grave was not random, but a deliberate provision for the soul's journey in the afterlife. This empirical evidence does not diminish the sacredness of a feather or the power of a stone. Instead, it enriches their story, adding profound layers of human connection, innovation, and shared understanding. It reveals a fundamental truth that across continents and millennia, humans have used the same beautiful, durable gifts from nature to answer the same eternal questions. We crafted meaning from the world around us, and in doing so, we left a record not just of what we believed, but of how we lived, traded, and reached out to one another. How does knowing the precise quarry of a standing stone deepen your awe of the people who moved it? A smooth, cool stone fits perfectly in the palm of your hand, its weight a quiet comfort against the buzz of a frantic mind. This feeling is not just cultural, it is deeply, fundamentally human, rooted in the very architecture of our shared psyche. The enduring power of these objects may stem from what the psychologist Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, a vast, hidden reservoir of innate memories and symbols common to all humanity. Within this reservoir exist archetypes, universal prototypes that form the bedrock of our deepest dreams, fears, and intuitions. A feather is not just a feather here, it is a direct expression of the spirit archetype, a symbol of transcendence, lightness, and the soul's desire to break free from earthly confines. A shell, with its protective, enclosing form and its origin in the primordial sea, powerfully echoes the womb archetype, representing the self, safety, and the very mystery of our biological origins. And a stone, unyielding and eternal, embodies the archetype of the self, of permanence and stability in a world of constant flux. Their simple, organic forms are instinctively pleasing to us, a visual and tactile antidote to the sharp, manufactured edges of modern life. Holding a smooth stone is a practice known as grounding, a way to anchor our scattered energy back into the solid, patient reality of the earth. The muffled roar inside a seashell is not just an echo of the ocean, but a trigger for a primal memory, a cellular recollection of the saline waters from which all life first emerged. These objects satisfy a profound human hunger for tangible connection to something larger and more enduring than our individual lives. They provide comfort by giving abstract fears and hopes a physical form to hold onto. They offer focus by drawing our attention away from chaotic thoughts and into a single, sensory experience, and they reignite a sense of wonder, reminding us that the world is still full of quiet, beautiful mysteries. In a storm of information and uncertainty, a feather, a shell, or a stone becomes a psychological anchor, its apparent simplicity belying its immense power to calm and center the human spirit. Why does the simple act of running your fingers over a worry stone feel so inherently soothing? It is because you are touching a symbol of stability that your own soul instinctively recognizes. That profound, instinctual comfort we draw from these natural objects carries a sobering responsibility. The very beauty that made feathers and shells so desirable also brought entire species to the edge of oblivion. In the late 19th century, the fashion for elaborate plumes on women's hats created a slaughter of such staggering scale that it sparked one of the first modern conservation movements. Egret colonies were decimated for their delicate breeding feathers, leaving nests of starving chicks behind. It was a brutal paradox, the desire to wear a symbol of nature's grace directly causing its destruction. This was not an isolated tragedy. The overharvesting of certain shells for the souvenir trade can strip reefs of vital cleaning organisms, disrupting the delicate balance of marine ecosystems. And the quarrying of beautiful stones for countertops and carvings can leave deep, lasting scars on the land, turning sacred mountains into gaping wounds. The modern use of these materials forces us to confront a critical ethical question. How can we honor traditions that rely on natural symbols without harming the very sources that give them meaning? A powerful answer is emerging through a renewed commitment to sustainable and ethical sourcing. Many contemporary artists and practitioners now insist on using only naturally molted feathers, gathered respectfully from the ground without disturbing the birds. International regulations like the CITES Treaty now control the trade of products from endangered species, creating a legal framework to protect what was once plundered without thought. Perhaps most importantly, there is a growing recognition of the value of traditional ecological knowledge. Indigenous communities who have harvested feathers, shells, and stones for generations often possess a deep, time-tested understanding of sustainable practices. They know when and how to gather in a way that allows populations to thrive, viewing themselves not as owners of the resource but as its stewards. This modern shift reflects a profound understanding that the spiritual power of an eagle feather is inseparable from the existence of eagles soaring in a healthy sky. The sacredness of a shell is bound to the vitality of the unpolluted ocean it came from. To truly respect the tradition is to honor and protect the source, ensuring that these ancient symbols of life are not reduced to relics of a lost world. Our reverence must now extend beyond the object itself to the living system that created it. A Siberian shaman's headdress of eagle feathers would have felt hauntingly familiar to an Aztec priest preparing for a solar ritual. Separated by vast oceans and entire continents, these cultures never met, yet they both looked to the sky and saw the same divine messenger. This pattern of parallel belief is one of history's most profound mysteries. The smooth black stone enshrined in the Kaaba in Mecca, a focal point for Muslim prayer, finds a distant echo in the sacred rocks venerated at Shinto shrines in Japan, both seen as vessels containing a potent spiritual essence. Half a world away, the indigenous peoples of Australia understand specific rock formations as the literal, petrified bodies of ancestral beings from the Dreamtime. The same pattern repeats with shells. The cowrie shell served as a form of currency from the kingdoms of West Africa to the islands of the Maldives, while simultaneously acting as a fertility talisman for tribes across North America. How could such specific symbolic connections emerge in complete isolation from one another? These are not coincidences. They are independent solutions to the same set of eternal human questions. Confronted by the universal mysteries of life, death, and the cosmos, our ancestors used the most beautiful and durable materials at hand to build a framework of meaning. A feather, by its very nature, suggests flight and spirit. A shell, with its protective shape and oceanic origin, naturally evokes life, fertility, and mystery. A stone, permanent and unyielding, becomes the obvious symbol of endurance and the divine. This shared symbolic language points to something fundamental within us all, a hardwired human propensity to find patterns, to seek the sacred in the tangible, and to weave narratives that connect us to the forces of nature. Our diverse traditions are not isolated monologues, but rather different verses in a single, global epic about what it means to be human. This deep, shared heritage invites us to look at the traditions of others not as foreign or strange, but as a reflection of our own deepest impulses to understand the world. An eagle feather is not just large, its structure is a masterclass in aerodynamic efficiency. The central shaft is incredibly strong, supporting a wide vein of interlocking barbs that create a silent, powerful surface. This physical perfection is precisely why it became a universal emblem of supreme vision and connection to the Creator. To hold one is to hold the essence of the sky itself. In contrast, the feathers of a wild turkey, while more common, carry a symbolism just as vital. Their iridescent bronze and copper sheen, coupled with the bird's role as a staple food source, made them powerful symbols of agricultural abundance, shared community, and the fertile earth. Every detail of a feather, from its rigidity to its subtle color, contributes to its story. Now hold a conch shell to your ear. The sound you hear is a pale echo of its true traditional purpose. This massive, heavy shell, with its distinctive pink-lipped aperture, was valued not for a whisper but for its roar. When a person blows into its prepared opening, the conch produces a deep, resonant blast that can carry for miles. This sound was considered the sacred breath of life itself, a vibration used to call communities to ceremony, to mark the transitions of life and death, and to purify spaces by shattering negative energy. Its spiral form, a perfect example of the golden ratio, was seen as a map of the expanding universe. Then there is the humble cowrie shell, small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. Its glossy, domed surface is often patterned like a carefully painted egg, and its long, narrow slit gives it an unmistakable appearance. This specific shape, so clearly reminiscent of the female form, made it a global symbol of fertility, childbirth, and the protective power of the divine feminine. Its smooth, durable nature also made it ideal for stringing into garments, necklaces, and ceremonial regalia, turning the wearer into a walking tribute to the mystery of creation. The language of stones is written in their substance and origin. A piece of clear quartz crystal, with its perfect geometric facets and ability to bend light, has been seen for millennia as a purifier and an amplifier. It was believed to focus intention, clarify thought, and channel healing energy, making it a staple in rituals across countless cultures. On the opposite end of the spectrum lies basalt, a stone born in the heart of a volcano. Its dark, dense, and often porous texture speaks of the raw, untamed, and primordial power of the earth. Monoliths and tools made from basalt were seen as direct links to the foundational, creative, and sometimes destructive forces of the planet. Learning to recognize these objects by sight and touch is like learning the alphabet of an ancient language. It is the first, essential step that unlocks the ability to read the deeper stories embedded within them. A turkey feather is not just a feather, it is a prayer for a bountiful harvest. A conch shell is not just a souvenir, it is a frozen song of creation. This practical knowledge transforms a simple walk in the woods or along a beach into a dialogue with history. What might you have previously overlooked as just a pretty stone or a broken shell now hums with the potential for a forgotten meaning. Your own story can be written with the same natural symbols that guided our ancestors. In our fast-paced digital world, we can engage with this ancient wisdom without adopting a foreign belief system. It is about finding personal resonance in these universal forms. You might keep a beautifully patterned river stone on your desk, its cool, solid weight a tangible anchor during a stressful day, a quiet reminder of endurance and stability. A single feather found on a morning walk could be placed on a bookshelf, not as decoration, but as a deliberate symbol of lightness and the ability to see your life from a higher perspective. A large spiraled shell used as a centerpiece honors its ancient role as a vessel of life. Its form a daily nod to the mystery of creation and the protective embrace of home. The power is not in the object itself, but in the conscious act of choosing it and reflecting on its meaning. This simple ritual creates a moment of pause, a brief bridge connecting your modern life to the deep, slow time of the natural world and human history. It is an invitation to recognize the layers of meaning that a simple stone or feather can hold, and to allow that richness to weave itself into your own personal narrative. This practice is not about cultural appropriation, but but about sincere appreciation and finding your own place within a story that belongs to all of humanity. What quiet intention would you assign to a natural object you choose to bring into your home? This personal application completes the journey, moving the narrative from the global and historical to the intimately, powerfully local. Our journey through these objects reveals a profound and simple truth. Humanity has always sought to converse with the universe, and feathers, shells, and stones were our very first vocabulary. They were the words we used to ask the biggest questions, to pray for protection, and to mark our place in the cosmos. The celestial message of a feather, the protective embrace of a shell, and the eternal memory of a stone are not isolated ideas. They form a recurring, global pattern of finding the sacred in the simple, the divine in the everyday. These traditions are far from relics of a superstitious past. They are powerful testaments to the enduring human capacity for wonder, for making meaning, and for forging a deep, spiritual connection with the world around us. They remind us, in the most tangible way, that our own story is completely and irrevocably intertwined with the story of the earth itself. The anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss captured this beautifully when he wrote, "The savage mind is logical in the same way as ours, though as the mind in a wild flower is logical." The logic he speaks of is not one of cold calculation, but a logic of the heart, a profound understanding that meaning is woven into the very fabric of nature. So the next time you casually hold a feather, a shell, or a stone, remember that you are not just holding a natural object. You are holding a piece of a vast, interconnected human story, a key to a forgotten language spoken by all of our ancestors. We would love to hear from you. Share in the comments a tradition from your own heritage or a personal experience you have had with one of these powerful natural symbols. Subscribe for more journeys into the hidden mysteries of our past and carry this newfound perspective with you. Let it change how you see the world, revealing the hidden history in every natural treasure you